Hello and welcome to the State of the Fleet Industry, a weekly video series produced by Automotive Fleet magazine and which is sponsored by Enterprise Fleet Management. I'm Mike Antich, editor of Automotive Fleet, and today I'd like to examine what's occurring in the fleet industry for the week of April 12th, 2021. And as I review what's currently happening in the fleet industry, many of the topics that we discussed last week are continuing this week on exactly the same trajectories. So for instance, retail sales continue to remain strong in the US. In fact, auto sales could even be stronger if it weren't for the ongoing microchip shortage, which is reducing overall production volumes. And nowadays, while we're on that topic, it seems like the shortage of microchips and constricted semiconductor inventory is driving and monopolizing a lot of industry conversation. And I think one of the reasons for that is that this microchip shortage is actually worse than what we initially thought. And its impact is extending beyond vehicle assembly and is causing shortages in everything from telematic devices to household appliances. And what makes this shortage so difficult is that it's unprecedented. It's an unprecedented challenge that we as an industry have never experienced before. And things are moving rapidly on a week to week basis as OEMs scramble to deal with this microchip shortage and in order to keep their production lines moving. And as a result, for someone such as me, it's hard to keep track of all of these developments as they're occurring in real time. So, for instance, last weekend, this past Saturday and Sunday, GM canceled some production shifts at its Fort Wayne assembly plant in Indiana and its Flint assembly plant in Michigan. And this is important to fleets because both of these plants manufacture trucks which are in high demand in both the fleet and retail markets. And likewise, Ford announced that this week its Chicago, Kansas City, and Flat Rock assembly plants will also be down due to this ongoing microchip shortage. But this problem isn't restricted to just a few OEMs. It's really an issue that's impacting the entire global automotive industry. All OEMs are being impacted, ranging from Subaru to Stellantis to Nissan to VW, and even automakers that earlier were not experiencing semiconductor inventory shortages, such as Hyundai, are now saying that they'll temporarily suspend production this Monday and Tuesday due to inventory shortages. And up to this point, Hyundai was able to continue vehicle assembly because it had maintained a stockpile of chips, but apparently it's drawn down enough on the stockpile to necessitate a temporary 2-day production suspension. And as we approach the end of this model year, there's going to be an effort on the part of OEMs to make up for this lost production. And in years past, during the summer months, there was a traditional 2-week shutdown of auto assembly plants, but that's going to change this year. Both GM and Ford announced last week that they're going to continue building trucks through these 2 traditional summer shutdown weeks in order to boost production to fulfill buyer orders. But the microchip shortage goes to an even larger issue. So, for example, do we as an industry need to revisit the strategy of just-in-time parts delivery that's been around since the late 1980s? And what are the risks associated with consolidating supply chains that limit alternative avenues? And what role does lean inventories play in exasperating these types of shortages? So questions to be asked, questions to be deliberated, but not everything that's happening in the fleet industry is bad news. One area that's experiencing very good news has been in the area of strong resale value for used fleet vehicles. And as we all know, there's been a shortage of used vehicle inventory in the wholesale market, while at the same time, there's an ongoing strong buyer demand for this product. And it's this imbalance of supply versus demand that's causing substantial increases in resale values. And the good news doesn't stop there. Other good news for fleet is that we're seeing increased demand for late model used vehicles, even those with higher mileages, as is the case with most out of service fleet vehicles. And again, this goes back to this ongoing shortage, this imbalance of used vehicle inventory vis-a-vis buyer demand. And while fleet vehicles may have higher mileages, they are traditionally well-maintained vehicles which helps offset buyer concerns about these higher mileages. And likewise, as the OEMs have prioritized their production to build higher margin models first, namely the trucks and SUVs, it's caused supply constraints in the inventory of vans in both the new and used vehicle markets, which is putting positive upward pressure on used van prices. And while many of these used vans are typically sold to contractors and tradesmen who are part of the vocational fleet markets, that would be a negative. On the whole, the higher van prices are good news for fleets in general. So on that positive note, I'd like to conclude my State of the Fleet Industry presentation for the week of April 12th, 2021, and I'd like to thank you for listening.